from CBS News. This is Nightwatch with Chris Glenn, Felicia Jeter, Harold Dow, and Karen Stone.
Hello out there and good morning. I'm Chris Glenn. We know the way to your heart is through your stomach, and that's exactly where we're going this morning. We're going to find out why gourmets are starting to eat American food.
And we've got an American nightmare, a young man who had the baseball world in the palm of his hand and wound up flat on his back. But first, here's Felicia with the news. Good morning, Felicia.
Good morning, Harold. The latest talks between the United Auto Workers and the Chrysler Corporation are expected to be over by the end of the week. The union will get Chrysler's response to a demand for a wage increase when they meet this morning. The talks were reopened after union members rejected a tentative contract because it did not include an immediate pay raise. The pro football strike is about to enter its fourth week. As the nation adjusted to a third Sunday without its usual teams, there were negotiations and a football game with some familiar names. Jane Miller reports.
It didn't draw much of a crowd, nor many of the big-name NFL players. But through a television deal, the first Striking Players All-Star game on Sunday did draw about $500,000 for the Players Union. In a hotel outside Baltimore, the bargaining teams in the NFL moved into their sixth straight day of secret negotiations to end the football strike. The mediator in the talks, lawyer Sam Cagle, said the two sides have resolved many issues, but he offered no clue as to whether the players and management had moved any closer to a strike settlement. Negotiators for the players and owners were expected to start face-to-face meetings late Sunday night on the major unresolved issue in the strike, money. Sources close to the talks say the union is working to change the language of its salary demands to make them easier for management to swallow and to show management it's willing to be flexible. But sources say the union has no plans to stray from its basic proposal that players be paid according to seniority from a fund that would be controlled independently of the owners. Jane Miller, CBS News, Hunt Valley, Maryland.
The General Fund of Social Security does not have enough money to meet its November payments to the elderly. So the agency plans to borrow money from its disability or health insurance funds sometime after the November election. The exact amount will not be known until the day of the loan, but it is expected to be $1 to $2 billion. Congress okayed such loans last year until a commission presents its suggestions for refinancing the pension trust fund. For President Reagan, it's a new week of politics and peace efforts. He'll meet with Lebanon's visiting president on Tuesday. But first, a message tonight on closed-circuit TV to Republicans in 15 states. No doubt the economy will be part of Mr. Reagan's pre-election message. He reiterated his concern for millions of out-of-work Americans, saying, quote, "It's real blood that I bleed for the unemployed." That comment came in an interview with U.S. News and World Report. Unemployment is just part of the wider economic picture, but according to MIT economist Lester Thoreau, it's not an American problem alone. It's a worldwide recession that needs a coordinated international response.
The idea that spontaneous combustion is going to occur, somehow the private economy is just going to take off by itself, that's precisely what got Herbert Hoover in trouble 50 years ago. We sat around waiting for something positive to happen. That something positive never happened. And we ended up with financial crises making sinking economies worse, and we ended up in that predicament that we now know as the Great Depression.
Well, it may not be a repeat of the 1930s today, but nearly 60% of those interviewed for a new poll say the United States is in deep and serious economic trouble. A Time magazine poll also found 61% saying they're worse off economically today than they were when President Reagan took office in January 1981. Even Mr. Reagan's son, Ron Jr., is collecting unemployment, as you know, but now there's word from Beckley, West Virginia, of a job, perhaps selling cars. Charlie Earhart says he'll even pay the airfare for Ron Jr., but the 23-year-old Mr. Reagan is set to resume dancing with New York's Joffrey Ballet November 1st, so he probably won't be available. Maybe next year, Mr. Earhart, we'll keep you posted. Let's hope, though, that Ron keeps tapping.
Okay. Milwaukee was hoping for another fine pitching performance from Mike Caldwell, and they got it. They also got more offense out of Robin Yount and some great defensive plays to help get past St. Louis in Game 5 of the World Series. We'll have the highlights coming up in sports. Pat Bayless might have pitched in the World Series. He was a hot minor league prospect, but something went very wrong. We'll have his story next. Plus a look at American eating. It's not considered in bad taste anymore.
Now look at today's weather. Precipitation will be light today with only 1/4 inch amounts across the Gulf Coast and in the northern Rockies. Eastern Montana may receive up to 2 inches of snow. Around the nation, Boston will be sunny with a high of 58 today. Miami partly cloudy and 79. Chicago partly cloudy and 70. And Seattle partly cloudy and 58 degrees today. This portion of Night Watch is sponsored by the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal, all the business news you need.
This isn't a big company, as you can tell, but it's mine, and I'm giving it everything I've got. That's why I get the Wall Street Journal delivered every day. It's filled with news and information that can affect business. It's my business, my company, my future. The Journal tells me every day what the big guys in business are doing, what they're planning to do, what the government's up to, what my competition's up to, what's happening that I should know about, what's about to happen. The Journal even has a regular weekly column about small business. I use it every day. Excuse me. The Wall Street Journal. Because we're small now, but we don't intend to stay small.
Get all the business news you need when you need it. Get the Wall Street Journal delivered every business day for about $1.80 a week. That's just $47 for 26 weeks. Call toll-free 1-800-228-6260. That's 26 weeks for about $1.80 a week. Call 1-800-228-6260 now.
The secret of a fine wood finish is no secret. It's Minwax, a very trusted name in wood finishing products. See how easy it is to bring out the best color in wood with Wood Finish by Minwax. And for extra protection, take your choice of polyurethanes and other protective finishes by Minwax. The difference shows with wood finishing products by Minwax, and that's no secret.
Sue Green is lying.
I can't play another set. My head is aching. I can't tell them I have hemorrhoids.
Honey, try Tronolane. It works better than Preparation H.
Clinical testing proves it. Tronolane does work better. It not only reduces swelling, it relieves pain better, itching better, with a hospital-used medicine Preparation H just doesn't have.
Can we play the next set? My headache is better.
Switch to the better relief of Tronolane in cream or suppositories.
The baseball season is winding to a close, but today we'll meet a former player whose season is in the sun has ended abruptly. Just when he appeared to be on the verge of stardom, Don Adams of KXTV Sacramento has his story.
He gave 140% of his life, his effort, his talent to the game of baseball, and they gave him crap in return.
Lowell Bayless is a bitter man. He feels he has good reason to be. His bitterness evolves from what happened to his son Pat, and how Pat's experience has left a deep hurt in the Bayless family. The story started back in the late 1950s, when coaxed by his father, Pat began catching, then pitching with the Livermore Little League. Despite some health problems, Pat went on to pitch during his early teenage years at Livermore High School, boasting one of the most impressive records in school history. In 1967, at age 18, Pat Bayless was signed with the Philadelphia Phillies. While at their farm club in Bakersfield, the tall, slender right-hander pitched a no-hitter and broke Don Drysdale's strikeout record, a knack he carried with him while playing Double-A ball in Reading, Pennsylvania, and Triple-A ball in Eugene, Oregon.
I was good, better than average, outstanding most of the time, because I was an 800% pitcher, or 750. You know, like I won 70% of my games is what I'm saying.
It wasn't long before Pat Bayless became the pride of Livermore.
So much so that a local fan club was started, and even this baseball diamond was named after him. But in 1971, following a recurring injury, Pat's luck ran out. And what followed, according to his family, was simply a tragedy.
To relieve the pain from nerve problems in his back, Pat says that team doctors gave him uncontrolled doses of butazolidine, which in recent years has been found to cause significant personality changes in some individuals. In 1971, Pat was released from the Phillies, and at that time, family members say he came home a different man.
At a point, he thought that his father was Joe DiMaggio. The Virgin Mary was his mother. Yes, I realized then that he was sick. I probably would have been making close to $1 million a year now, right up there with Carlton and Ryan and all those guys, and Bruce Gossage of the Yankees. Because they praise Gossage like he's God, man, and he throws 95. Well, I threw 95 or better. And I was only 20 years old. I was throwing 103 miles an hour the night I pitched my no-hitter.
Since 1971, Bayless has been in and out of Napa State Hospital 3 times. Each week, he is given an injection to control his emotions. He spends most of his time now smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee at a Livermore restaurant. That's when he is not at St. Michael's Church trying to sort out his thoughts. And his parents, they have found their own special way of coping.
Well, I keep a lot of things inside. And people say, you know, it doesn't seem to bother you at all. Well, it does bother me. But it's mostly inside. And probably always will bother me.
Phillies officials are not commenting on the Pat Bayless case, as litigation is pending. As for Pat, he has few souvenirs left of his once promising career. A few years ago, he tore up his scrapbook and threw away most of his equipment. He doesn't have any desires to play baseball anymore. He's just trying to figure out what went wrong. And already, he has some answers.
The good Lord's taking care of me. I'm fine. I did have a problem with drugs because when you take drugs as long as I did, and as powerful drugs as I took, for the length of time I took them, you're going to get hooked.
Dan Adams for CBS News, Livermore, California.
How vulnerable an athlete is when that cheering fades. Chris?
That's an uncomfortable story to watch, I thought. Coming up on Night Watch, you'll have everything from soup to nuts on American food. Gourmets beware, home-cooked goodness is making a comeback.
You'll be barking up the right tree for canine comedy when Ralph grabs the leash on The Muppet Show. Monday, it's a doggone case of Muppet madness when Ralph flips for Petula Clark. Tuesday, you'll hear applause from the paws of Ralph for comedian George Burns. Wednesday, puppy love makes the Muppet Pooch want to steal a smooch from Phyllis George. And Thursday, Ralph tickles the ivories with his idol Victor Borga. Don't miss these dog days on The Muppet Show, beginning Monday at 7:30 on Channel 2.
Crazy Eddie's going computer crazy with an incredible selection of home computers and computer software. Atari, Texas Instruments, Commodore, Xerox. Crazy Eddie's got them all at the guaranteed lowest prices. Shop around, get the best prices you can find on computers, then go to Crazy Eddie and he'll beat them. Crazy Eddie's going computer crazy. Now's the time to get the home computer you've always wanted. Crazy Eddie, his computer prices are insane. If you're looking for a home computer, go to see Crazy Eddie now, because Crazy Eddie's greatest computer sale ever is on right now with prices that are insane.
I report news like the overcrowding of our prisons and how plant closings have taken thousands from the assembly line to the unemployment line. But I also make time to cover other kinds of stories, like my reports on Thursday's Child, about kids who, because of their age, medical problems, or some other reason, have a hard time getting adopted. So many of you care that those kids are now being helped. That's another kind of news we look for at Channel 2, because if it concerns you, it concerns us.
Every day, hundreds of citizens like you, like me, are overcome by a scene like this. Did you know most locks can be picked in a matter of minutes? One can't. Fichet. 12 million sold worldwide, and not one ever reported to Fichet as picked. One reason? This unique four-sided key. Fichet costs more than common locks, but a lot less than this. Check your lock. If it doesn't say Fichet, see your locksmith. Insist on Fichet.
Fichet, it costs more, but it protects more.
Time is running out for many children with special needs. Give them a place in your home. Call Sheltering Arms 679-4242.
What's cooking this side of the Atlantic? Quite a lot of good food, according to some gourmet chefs. It seems the land of the hamburger may have more to offer the world than that, so we snuck a peek and found a full-fledged American cuisine.
2 French fries, 1 cheeseburger, and 1 plain hamburger with just meat and bread.
Wrapped with cheese, heavy mayonnaise cut in half, fries, small coat.
The grand old USA has become the land of junk food.
3 Whoppers, and 3 small oranges, and 1 French fry.
Having it your way doesn't mean you're going to give your stomach a break today. We seem to have become a nation of McNuggets, Whoppers, and finger lickers when it comes to eating out. The insult we inflict on our innards is topped only by the injury we suffer in our wallets when we go out for a so-called fine meal at some French bistro, where reading the menu is only the first hurdle of a gastronomic obstacle course.
Risen alive, half-Maine lobster, prepared Parisian call for appetizer.
But just a minute, please. After decades of playing the baked bean circuit, America may finally be coming to the point where it can call its cooking cuisine.
I think this is the great surge of eating, plus the fact that people in the last 20 years have traveled more than they've ever traveled. They take a
James Beard is viewed by many as the granddaddy of American cuisine.
They go everywhere and they learn more and more.
There's many people like myself who are saying, yes, we are Americans, and yes, we are as fine as any other restaurant or any other cuisine in the world.
Larry Forgione of the River Cafe under the Brooklyn Bridge is a strong believer that American cuisine can be #1.
In defining the future of American cuisine or the new American cuisine, I think it's going to be a balance or a marriage between the ingredients of our native land combined with a modern, simple, sophisticated way of cooking. People have said that I'm a pioneer of the new American cuisine. What I would like to think is that I'm a pioneer of a new American awareness. Slice, yeah. But the key factor for young chefs is that they're interested, dedicated, and willing to work for what they believe in.
Entrance and exit to the kitchen. This is a salad bar up at the top there. Okay, everybody familiar with what we got?
Cooking for cash may not be the world's oldest profession, but cooking schools around the country are now turning away scores of aspiring chefs. The Culinary Institute of America has a 3-year waiting list. The school's president, Ferdinand Metz.
The benefit of all will be that the strong concepts will survive, whereas the weak ones will fall by the wayside. And in 5 years from now, we'll have a very strong concept of American cuisine, which will be able to be further developed and perpetuated and will be around for many, many years to come.
The concept seems to have really caught on in many large cities across the country in a wide variety of forms. Those who think takeout is for pizza or chop suey have thought twice after shopping at American gourmet-to-go shops like The Natural Source in New York.
I think American food is boring, and this is more, I mean, it's good, you know, I like turkey and everything, but this is just, it has more to it.
More and more becoming what I associate with American cuisine. Less of the junk food, more of the good quality stuff.
But the most unusual dish sold here is not what you might think. What would you consider to be the most unusual dish that you sell?
Roast chicken and dumplings.
You're kidding.
To me, that is.
Robert Cobb has made a multi-million-dollar business out of his premise that people are craving wholesome food prepared in a sophisticated manner. Where are we going now, Robert? Does American cookery have a direction at this point, and if so, what is that?
Back to basics, back to early frontier days. The cornbread, you know, roast chicken and dumplings, the basics. That's what I do.
If all these champions of the new American cuisine accomplish what they have set out to do, the American diner will be the real winner. For where else in the world is there so much to eat and so much to choose from?
I didn't mean.
I know. I know.
Let's talk. I'll make us some coffee.
Times like these are made for Taster's Choice.
Taster's Choice, a premium blend of some of the world's best coffee beans, freeze-dried to keep its fresh brewed flavor for your best coffee times.
This is the number that takes you places you might never go, shows you things you might never see, brings you face to face with beauty. This is the number that brings you Smithsonian Magazine. This is the number that shows you the lives we led, the lives we lead, the life around us. This is the number that brings you Smithsonian Magazine. Call this toll-free number for your year's subscription to Smithsonian. 12 monthly issues for $17. What's more, you'll automatically become an associate member of the Smithsonian Institution, eligible for travel benefits and book and gift discounts. Nature, art, science, history, our whole world. There's no other magazine like Smithsonian.
This is the number that brings you 12 monthly issues of Smithsonian Magazine for only $17. 800-228-6606. That's 800-228-6606. Phone now, toll-free. A whole world is waiting for you.
Professor, what's that cereal you're enjoying?
Ah, yes, the dates, the raisins, the walnuts, fruit, and... it escapes me.
Post Fruit and Fiber cereal. It tastes so good, you forget the fiber.
The name, good question. It contains delicious fruit. It's fruit and... I forget.
Fruit and Fiber tastes so good, you forget the fiber.
It's fruit and... fruit.
Fruit and Fiber, also with apples and cinnamon. It tastes so good, you forget the fiber.
Okay, at the World Series, the St. Louis Cardinals go home knowing they must win 2 in a row or else. Sunday in Game 5 in the 3rd inning, Cecil Cooper's grounder to first scored Paul Molitor to make it 2-1. The Brewers, Keith Hernandez made a great stop on the bad hop to end the rally. And in the 7th, Robin Yount, whose World Series heroics have kept the Brewers scoring, homered to make it 4-2, a lead they never gave up. 6-4 the final. Brewers lead 3-2. We may not have had the right tape up on that one. After the game, there were worried looks on the Cardinals' faces and the beginnings of smiles on the Brewers' faces. Okay, we don't have that tape either. Okay, fine. We want to continue here. Just stick with us. We'll straighten this all out in a moment. Game 6 is Tuesday night in St. Louis, and the rookie, John Stuper, goes for St. Louis against veteran John Sutton for Milwaukee.
We hit the ball well, but it seemed like every time we got men on base, we hit a double play or something. You know, we hit the ball good, but when we really needed it, we really couldn't come through.
We hit balls on the nose with men on base, and they just right at people, just one of those things. And they made some key defensive plays.
You know, you look at the scoreboard, and we had 14 hits. We didn't score runs. And, you know, I think we made the adjustment that we had to make. We just didn't score the runs. So, you know, I hope people realize that it's not always how many hits you get, it's how many runs you score.
You're down 3-2 now, but you get to go home and play the final 2. No question, you know, if we've ever won 2 in a row, now's the time to do it. And we play good at our ballpark, and I'm looking forward to getting back there and hopefully taking 2.
I was in the right place today. You know, I had a few hits, and they were at the right time, and we capitalized on them. So in that way, we were able to win the game. But you got to give Mike Caldwell a lot of credit too. He pitched another fine game. He gave up a few more hits, but he didn't give up a whole lot of runs.
Mike is a real competitor, and he gets himself in a little trouble now and then, but he gets himself out of it. And he had a gutsy performance today. They've got a few base hits off of him, but yet he bounced back, and he was still throwing the ball good in the 9th inning. But at the point I took him out, I thought it might be best.
I like to think that I'm capable of helping us win anytime I go out there. Obviously, it's a more exciting situation now, but I won't approach it any differently. I just hope the end results will be a little bit better than the last time I faced him. If you can't have fun, if you can't be excited right now, then it's time for him to throw the dirt in your face.
Joe Kapp was a rough-and-tumble quarterback who once led the Minnesota Vikings to the Super Bowl, but he disappeared soon after that in a bitter court battle with the NFL. Well, Joe Kapp is once again fighting his battles on the field, and Robert Lipside of CBS News Sunday morning broadcast reports that Kapp thinks more of us should do the same.
35! Play 35! Stand on! I do! Field, and a baby, run, drive it!
Joe Kapp is back at Cal. The macho quarterback who never caked out, who dragged pro football to the Supreme Court, is now a teacher of the game and of life.
I think life is for living. I think that one of the challenges to come back to and coach right now is part of that. I mean, the action, the excitement, that's living, believe me. To lay it on the line like you have to do in the game of football is exciting.
Get him going, get him going, get him going. Ball in the pit, ball in the pit.
Football is 100 years old at the University of California at Berkeley. There have been few winning seasons since Joe Kapp played here. There is drama in his homecoming, and there is pain. Kapp raised the price by increasing and intensifying the practice sessions. He demanded more of an emotional commitment. Even a player with pro aspirations, like offensive lineman Harvey Salem, had his doubts.
It was just so different, just the way he comes out. You know, he's kind of a lunatic at first. You're not sure where he's coming from, and then I'll start to see that, you know, he's really very sincere in what he's saying to you. I don't know if we're going to make it through the year, but we're working real hard.
If the experience that our players are having is not an educational experience, then what are we doing here? And I think that as human beings, we should spend the rest of our lives isn't knowledge power, trying to improve ourselves. It's what separates us from animals.
To listen to Joe Kapp, the 44 years of his life have been a preparation for this job. He was raised poor but optimistic in Salinas, Steinbeck country, by a Mexican mother and a German father. He always had hope.
For me to come and get a scholarship to play at the university and attend the university and get that education, and then also to come back and coach, I mean, it's like a dream come true for me.
Kapp finally made the NFL. He lasted 4 years. In 1970, he led the Minnesota Vikings to the Super Bowl, lost the game, lost a salary dispute, and eventually lost a lawsuit challenging pro football's free agency restrictions.
It's kind of an irony in the sense that had they dealt with you in what would have been a rational and fair way then, they probably wouldn't have had a strike now.
I think that's key to this whole situation with the Players Union. If management, if the owners would have been fair right down the line, there'd be no problems. But the game is great, and everybody's making money, and, you know, so they continue to go and play it, and it preys on one thing, the addiction of players wanting to play. That attraction is powerful. Winning is the bottom line over here somewhere. In my opinion, you play like you practice, and you practice like you live. Well, there is a result on Saturday afternoon, and that's nice in life. It's either win, which is absolute heaven, or lose, which is hell.
On this Saturday, it was heaven, which perhaps explains why, on Sunday, Kapp was so high on the game.
Maybe if we had a football game, you know, versus the Russians, or let the Arabs and the Israelis fight each other or whatever, you know, maybe that'd be better. Play football against each other.
Do you think that would be a good idea?
Yes, I think so.
Would you like to be the coach?
No, I'm coaching where I want to be, University of California.
And that story puts a cap on this half hour of Night Watch, but there's a lot more on the way. In just a moment, we'll update the latest news, sports, and much more, so stick around.
CBS News, this is Nightwatch with Christopher Glenn, Felicia Jeter, Harold Dow, and Karen Stone.
And good morning to you all. I'm Chris Glenn. Today we're going to discuss whether the news media should become part of the news.
And we'll examine a hostage situation in which the kidnapper demanded and got time on the air. But first, here's Felicia with the news.
Thanks, Harold. In the news at this hour, Lebanon's new president, Amin Gemayel, will address the UN General Assembly later today. Chrysler is to respond today to a demand from the United Auto Workers for an immediate pay increase. And 14 people, 12 of them skydivers, are dead this morning in Taft, California after the crash of a twin-engine plane. Amin Gemayel, the president of Lebanon, elected a month ago, goes before the United Nations General Assembly later today. Gemayel spoke Sunday to an enthusiastic crowd of several thousand Lebanese at New York's Waldorf Astoria Hotel. He told them Lebanon will soon be free of all foreign forces. That's part of what Gemayel will discuss with President Reagan on Tuesday at the White House. Gemayel is also expected to ask the Security Council for a 3-month mandate extension of the UN peacekeeping forces in southern Lebanon. There will be a test later today in Kenya for the new American policy about Israel. A United Nations group, the International Telecommunications Agency, votes in a few hours on Israel's expulsion from the communications conference in Nairobi. Secretary of State Schultz pledged this weekend that the United States would halt payments to any UN branch that votes to expel Israel. The Foreign Ministry in Jerusalem expressed its appreciation for the U.S. position. President Reagan will deliver his pre-election pep talk via closed-circuit television later today to Republicans in 15 states. Some GOP hopefuls may be a bit concerned about the outcome on Election Day, but Mr. Reagan himself seems to be thinking ahead to a different election day in 1984, as CBS News correspondent Fred Graham heard from White House counselor Edwin Meese on Face the Nation.
Larry Speaks, the deputy press secretary, said very pointedly during the week that he thought President Reagan would run for re-election. Do you feel the same way?
My personal belief is that he probably will. He hasn't made up his own mind yet. He won't until sometime, I would say, probably late next year. But I have, if I had to bet right now, I'd certainly bet that he would run again.
Whatever the outcome of the congressional races November 2nd, Meese says that the president has no plans to change his economic strategy. And Meese says there are also no plans by the administration to back off on sanctions over the Soviets' natural gas pipeline project. Chrysler is expected to respond to the auto workers' demand for a pay hike when the two sides meet at the bargaining table again today. The talks resumed after UAW members rejected a tentative contract because it did not provide for an immediate pay hike. The union is reportedly asking an increase of $1 an hour. With the pro football strike about to enter its 4th week, round-the-clock talks continue outside of Washington. Mediator Sam Cagle appeared briefly on Sunday to say the two sides were still discussing non-economic issues. Baseball is over in Milwaukee for 1982. The Brewers left their hometown fans on a win, taking the 5th game of the World Series 6-4. As the game ended, fans rushed onto the field to congratulate their team and mark the end of the first championship baseball season in that city since 1957. The last games of the series will be played in St. Louis. But they were real happy there in Milwaukee. Investigators for the National Transportation Safety Board will be checking on whether the plane that crashed, killing 14 people, was overloaded. The plane was carrying a group of skydivers when it slammed into the desert about 130 miles from Los Angeles and only 8 miles from its takeoff point. The invention of the internal combustion engine led directly to the automobile and not so directly to the California lifestyle and then on to smog. Now that smog has been proven to be harmful, Angelenos are faced with a choice: give up their cars and their freeways or live with smog. Linda Douglas has more on that story now.
Days, the only way you can see Los Angeles is to use your imagination.
I feel terrible on a smoggy day.
My eyes bother me, my nose itches.
Tightness in my chest, a little shortness of breath.
Kind of low-key, quiet.
For years, local officials have struggled to meet mandatory federal clean air standards. Now they have approved a plan which could make Los Angeles go from this sometimes to this all the time by the year 2000. It calls for tighter controls on industrial polluters and car emissions, but the final success of the plan hinges on a radical assumption that people here are willing to give up life as they know it now. Life in Southern California means an average commute of 1 hour. To clean up the air, says the plan, homes and offices must be closer together, something that has already begun through land use planning.
It's not that hard to convert Los Angeles from a network of interlocking freeways to a network of citylets where the people live and work in the same sort of areas.
Much of the plan is a wish list. That gasoline will be phased out and replaced by electricity and methanol. That commuters will start biking and walking. And that the computer age will take people off the freeways because they'll be working at home. These proposals must endure the test of long-standing cynicism to be implemented by local legislatures. But air pollution officials argue there is no longer a choice.
We would have a build-up increasing over a period of years to the point where I think people would flee the area because the air would be so unacceptable.
Longtime residents are hopeful but skeptical. The air here has been naturally dirty for centuries. Dust blown by sea breezes, trapped by the mountains. Is there hope, they wonder, for this place the Indians called the Valley of Smoke? Linda Douglas, CBS News, Los Angeles.
The luxury of instant communication has its price, as some news people in New York found out last week. A gunman holding hostages demanded time on the air, and he got it. We'll examine what could be a dangerous precedent next on Night Watch.
Now look at today's weather. The coldest temperatures will be in the northern Rockies, where readings will be only near or slightly above the 40 mark. Mild air will push into the Great Plains today, where temperatures will climb into the 70s and 80s. Around the nation, Atlanta will be cloudy with a high of 67. St. Louis partly cloudy and 76. Denver partly cloudy and 74. And San Francisco sunny and 71.
Think you're ready, go down to Crazy Eddie, the man who's got most everything in stereo sound. His audio selection will be with your perfection. He's the man with all the lowest prices around. So come on down and put him to the test. See whose prices really are the best. Who fix you up with the sound that fits your place and guarantee a smile upon your face. Oh, when you think you're ready, down to Crazy Eddie, the man who's got most everything in stereo sound. And so the story's told across the whole wide world. Crazy Eddie will not ever be undersold.
Crazy Eddie, now with 10 great locations in Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Syosset, Paramus, East Brunswick, Union, Westchester, Westbury.
Hi, this is James Noble. Americans spend over $23 billion a year on the purchase of alcoholic beverages. Martinis at a business luncheon, a cocktail party, beer at a barbecue, or drinking at home. With increasing alcohol consumption, there has been a corresponding increase in alcohol abuse. You can help reverse this trend.
Call the New York City affiliate of NCA, 935-7070.
A lot of people think I never smile. Well, I have a serious interest in the news I report. I think it's important to try to uncover the little facts that are not always apparent. Quite often, those little facts give you a better understanding of a story and how it affects you. That's important, too, because you've shown that you have a serious interest in the news. That's Channel 2 News. If it concerns you, it concerns us. Besides, I do smile. See?
Newspapers, radio, and television entertain and inform, but sometimes they play a more active role. One unsettling example occurred last week in New York City. An escaped criminal, Larry Van Dyke, took 6 hostages in a Brooklyn hospital. He demanded the media play a major role in negotiations. They grabbed the chance. Hostages were pushed before eager television cameras. A newspaper reporter became the principal bargainer for police. There was closed-circuit television linking Van Dyke's basement stronghold with the police command center. He demanded special radio reports over a local station, and he got them. As time wore on, 3 hostages were released, and Van Dyke laid down more demands. That, too, was a media event. Van Dyke wanted assurances he would not be returned to a state prison where he feared a reputation as an informer would get him killed. Corrections officials took center stage as Van Dyke got jumpier and negotiations became more tense. Finally, after 47 hours, the last hostage was released, and Van Dyke had his final say on television before returning to prison. Now, did the media help end that hostage standoff peacefully, or did the extraordinary coverage, often live, help to prolong it? With us today is Bella English, a reporter for the New York Daily News, who did much of the negotiating with Larry Van Dyke in that situation. Bella, how did you first get the word that you were wanted in this case? How did the call come to you, and what did you think when you got it?
Well, I was on another assignment. I had started making a call that morning on this situation. I got some just very basic information, the name, who he was, where he was, why he was doing it, basically. I gave it to the city desk, and I said, I'm going on this special project I'm working on. I'll be gone the rest of the day. Gave him the address where I'd be, fortunately. And about an hour and a half after I left, I got a call that my city desk wanted me. They said, all they said was very cryptic. They said, you're wanted in the hostage negotiations. He wants to talk to you. I said, who? And they said, this guy. I said, why? They said, we don't know. Police car will be waiting downstairs to take you to the helicopter.
Did you make any connection with him? I mean, had you
Not
had
at
any
all.
Contact before?
Oh, yes, we had had contact before, but I didn't remember him. I don't even know if he told me his name the first time he called me. It wasn't until I got to the hospital and when the policeman was escorting me down the hall and said, he says he knows you, he says he's talked to you over the phone before from Rikers Island. And then I stopped in my tracks. I said, oh, it must be this guy who called me a couple times last spring and summer. He wanted me to check out a story that was about 4 years old and was in Attica, so it wasn't really our circulation and it was an old story. So I sort of politely told him that. And he called me back once or twice more, as I recall.
Well, now, what did you think about being thrust into the middle of this thing? It was almost as if they didn't even ask you. They sort of told you you were going to do this. You're a reporter. You're used to covering stories, but all of a sudden you're in this middle of this life and death situation.
Well, I was really uncomfortable when the call first came over. All the way over there, I thought, this must be a reaction to one of my stories. I was beginning to feel very guilty. What if he makes impossible demands and results and people are killed? And I also had the ambivalence about becoming a part of a story and not covering it, but being covered. And but once I got in there and the police explained to me the seriousness of the situation, they had held off for a couple hours before they called me until they thought it was absolutely necessary. Then I didn't even think about it for 2 whole days.
It was a real long haul for you to do that, and I presume that you were exhausted and you were scared and all of those usual things. But did you feel that you were a hostage yourself, that you were trapped in this situation?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I wrote that in my story today.
Oh.
Everybody there was a hostage. The relatives, of course the hostages themselves, the scores and scores of police, the press who were covering it, and the handful of other principal players.
Just before we take a break here, Bella, tell us, how can you report as a reporter and be a negotiator? How can you remain neutral and meet your objective standards of reportage?
That's a constant problem. Fortunately, I wasn't covering the news story as such. We had 2 other reporters out there and some rewrite men on the other side. What I did was write first-person accounts of my negotiations with him.
So you were covered in the hard news sense.
Right. I had nothing to do with it. I would get them some
Let's take a brief break here, and then we're going to come back and do some more. Nightwatch will be right back with Bella English, New York Daily News reporter who played a part in a recent hostage-holding situation. We'll be right back. Please don't go away.
Remember how you suffered the last time you had a head cold? Well, remember this. To relieve congestion, sinus pressure, sneezing, and runny nose, no leading nasal spray offers more kinds of relief ingredients than 4-way nasal spray. Dristan Long-Lasting doesn't. Duration doesn't. Afrin doesn't. 4-way works with a combination of 2 decongestants and an antihistamine. In fact, no leading spray relieves more kinds of cold symptoms than 4-way. Not Dristan, not Duration, not Afrin. Remember 4-way next time you have a cold.
Del Monte Light. People like it better. Get the flavor of a bright light. Del Monte Light.
People are switching to light fruit and deciding Del Monte Light tastes best. No artificial flavors or sweeteners, just fresh fruit taste bursting through.
Nice finish.
Come on over to the bright light.
Great fruit taste.
Del Monte Light.
This is Eileen Prose. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow. You know what? I love being a working woman, but we all know how tough it is to make it in the business world. Well, now at last, you can have the inside information by people who have been there, the do's and don'ts of moving up the ladder of success. It's all right here in Working Woman, the award-winning magazine for women of achievement. Regularly, you would pay $16 for 12 monthly issues, but on this very special TV offer, you pay only $12. And if you act now, you'll receive free with your paid subscription Boss Lady by Joe Foxworth, the book that says there's room at the top for you and how to get there. Working Woman, the magazine for women who expect to be taken seriously. Here's how to order.
Save 50% off the newsstand price. 12 issues for $12 and your free copy of Boss Lady. Call 800-453-4000. That's 800-453-4000.
We're back discussing the role of media in hostage-holding situations, such as Bella English, a reporter for the New York Daily News, got involved in last week in New York City. And joining us now is Frank Bowles, the man who started the New York City Police Department hostage negotiating unit about 10 years ago, and for many years was its chief negotiator. And Chris Borgen, a longtime friend of mine and a reporter at WCBS TV in New York City, who has himself been involved in a lot of hostage situations. Frank, you're the guy who started all this, and you've watched the fact that the media is getting involved in it grow in both numbers and importance over the years. What do you think of that situation? Is that good, or is that in fact perpetuating this kind of thing?
Well, we've always had the media involved with it, in that when we started the program, we brought the media in to see what we were doing, because they are an integral part of it. But we don't want the media to actually become a participant in the particular operation. That can be very, very difficult.
But they do, in fact.
In some instances, we have even requested people from the media, if individual people have a certain amount of credibility on an individual job. Each job is a little bit different. We have guidelines that generally direct us in the way we're going, but every job is a little different. But as a general rule, we have to be very cautious that the media does not become a participant, because someone will play for that media coverage, and in fact, the media becomes a hostage to the person who's holding the others.
Now, Chris, how many of these things have you been involved in?
12.
12? A dozen?
Yes.
A dozen times the police have called you and said, we'd like you, in effect, they say, we'd like you to put your life on the line for us to walk into this situation where a man is holding a weapon on people. How do you feel about that as an individual? Is that fair to you?
Well, two things. It usually doesn't work that way. Usually it is the person who requests that you come and act as the mediator.
Right.
And what my feelings, trepidations. I don't know if I'm qualified to be the individual who, by his position in that negotiations, will contribute to the loss of life or the savings of a life. I really don't feel that I'm qualified to do that. Nevertheless, you have that human problem. A person is holding other people hostage. Their lives are on the line. You have to make that gut decision. Hey, that could be my wife, that could be my child, that could be my mother or my father. I would love to believe, if it were me in there being a hostage, that someone would come in and try to negotiate my life, my freedom.
Frank, do you think that it's a bad precedent to allow people who take hostages and make demands to have instant access to the media if they wish?
I think the instantaneous access is a little bit touchy, because you do get a certain amount of imitation in situations.
Copycats.
For example,
yeah.
Right. For example, terrorists especially would give a manifesto. Now you sort of wonder, would the New York Times, ABC, NBC, CBS put something out for a terrorist organization? And then if you do that, again, you have that possibility of another person trying the same thing. Again, though, I must say each job is different. I think Bella did a fantastic job, and in order to give credibility to the negotiators, many times the people in there feel that they're going to be blown away. They think they're going to be killed.
We've got a lot more to talk about, and we want to ask you some more questions too, Bella. So Nightwatch will be right back with our guest this evening. We're talking about the role of the media in hostage-holding situations. Please don't go away.
You can change your luck today. 2 games for a buck to play. More time to make your picks. Play Lotto Saturdays till 6. Play Lotto. 2 games for just a buck. 2 chances to change your luck. But to win it, you got to get in it. So get in and try to win today. Play Lotto. L-O-T-T-O. Play Lotto.
Moments for you on CBS. Moments when you laugh out loud. Moments when you sigh. Moments when your heart stands proud. Moments when your spirits seem to rise and fly. Great moments every day now. Great moments here to stay now. Great moments for you on CBS.
Football is a rough game, but the pain usually goes away. For many, there's a pain that just won't go away, the pain of arthritis. The truth is, arthritis is not just a part of growing old. In fact, arthritis affects 250,000 children. Children, it's time we took arthritis seriously.
Thanks, Mean Joe.
Get serious about arthritis. Contact your local arthritis foundation.
If you think you got the style of the clothes you wear, come out to the Rainbow Shop. Finest prices and selection you'll find anywhere. Come out to the Rainbow Shop.
Now's the time to get a new coat. Rainbow Shops has slashed prices 20% on every single coat and jacket in the store during their Columbus Day coat and jacket sale.
If you think you got the style of the clothes you wear, come out to the Rainbow Shop. Come out to the Rainbow Shop.
Back now talking about the role of the media in situations in which hostages demand their participation as negotiators. And Bella English of the New York Daily News, the situation that you were in last week was pretty scary, but I'm wondering basically how did you feel about the ethical conflict, the requirement that you be a professional reporter, that you be neutral, that you observe, and the fact that you were called upon to do a different kind of job there. Isn't that a conflict of interest for you?
Well, it definitely is. And I worried about it a lot on the way in there. Once I got in that room and I picked up the phone and began talking to a man who had a loaded gun and 5 people and behind closed doors, my journalistic role sort of took a second seat, a back seat, and I really just became not a negotiator exactly.
But you wrote a lot of stories, a lot of columns about it. Did that affect your writing? I mean, did it color it to the extent where you thought you were no longer a good reporter, perhaps?
I don't really think so. I wasn't doing the hard news coverage. The stories I wrote were, as I said, first-person accounts, and they were a bit more subjective, but I think they were played that way. I mean, people knew I wasn't covering the factual play-by-play part of it as much as I was giving a more sort of impressionistic stroke.
Well, let me ask Chris the same thing. You've been in a dozen of these things. What have been your thoughts? Have they evolved any about this conflict of interest question as you've done more and more of them, and how?
Once you step into that situation, you cannot be a reporter. Not for the hard news, as Bella just said. That is left for someone else to write. The only thing I can write is a first-person subjective review of what happened, of which I participated. And as of that moment, you're no longer so much a reporter as you are a reviewer of a given group of situations, a group of runs that you were involved in.
Did you have any is it harder for you to make that jump from being the factual reporter to the participant and therefore the color observer, so to speak, of
It's
the
difficult because when you come to the scene, you want to be the reporter. And once you become involved, you know that you cannot be the reporter because you no longer can be completely objective, honestly fair with the overall view, because you're dealing with the person on a very subjective level. There's an identity there and a crisis because of that identity.
Right.
And as a result, write the sidebar story, but you can't write the hard news.
We're going to take another short break, and we'll be back with our 3 guests discussing the role of the media in hostage-holding situations when Nightwatch continues straight ahead. Stay with us, please. Our Night Watch subject this evening is the role of media in hostage-holding situations. And Frank Boltz, as the former chief negotiator for the NYPD hostage negotiating team, what do you think qualifies a media person, a reporter, to become a negotiator in these situations?
Well, I think they deal with people constantly, and I think that's what a negotiator is, a person who can stimulate the hostage taker into talking, and reporters are interviewers, and that's what a negotiator is. He's trying to get that person who's pent up with anxiety to ventilate that anxiety. But a second dual role is the reporter is a credible person who's a neutral person who the hostage taker feels will protect him when he's coming out, because no matter what the police say to him, many times they feel they're going to see, what's going to happen is what they see on television. When they come out, they're going to be blown away by the cops. And it's not so, especially here in New York. When we work with them, we actually paint a word picture as to what they will see when they come out. Sure, we have cops there with rifles, machine guns, and shotguns, but the emergency service people are all disciplined people, and they will not fire, even if fired upon.
Chris, I remember a situation where you were in a bank, hostage holding 49 people
49 people
yes. Coming out of the bank like this, yes, with your hands up. Was that to guard against, were you actually shielding them?
Yes. Their fear was that police armada outside, and the fact that they had to look out of those windows and see this armada of guns facing them in that bank window, even as one of their cohorts, Mace Brown, one of the 10 most wanted men, was dead on the sidewalk in front of them. His brain spilt out on the sidewalk. They thought that was to be their fate. And for 4.5 hours, the object was to convince them that it was not going to be their fate. And then finally, to say, I tell you what, I will stand in front of you and come out with the flag up. If anyone fires, I'm to be the first hit. Just put your guns in my pocket.
Let me ask you, every time you get into one of these things, do you worry about this? Oh Lord, this is something I can't deal with. I'm going to talk myself into my grave, trying to do this. I'm not a qualified.
Yes, yes, always. Tremendous responsibility.
What makes you do
just say, because there is that feeling that life is sacrosanct. There's nothing more important than life. And if you can be, as of that moment, a tool to save a life, by the love of God, you've got to do it. There's nothing else you can do. You have to.
What's the bottom line, Frank?
As Chris indicated, life is the most important thing. Criminals can be recaptured, property can be recovered, money can be reprinted if necessary, but no one can bring back a life. We've even had with, for example, the emergency service at the John and Al sporting goods store. One of their own men was killed by the perpetrators in that gun shop. And yet, even though these people inside fired about 140 rounds out, the emergency service people maintained firearms discipline and did not shoot.
Are the police resentful at all of the fact that these hostage holders call for the reporters and they want them to come in? Do you think you're getting undercut in your jobs?
Every once in a while, it's you know, they always feel, well, gee, we're trying to do a good job, and yet we recognize, we've been trained to recognize that that is their problem. We send in, usually we will send in the credentials of the reporter who's outside and let them know that that reporter will be outside to witness their coming out, and many times we'll meet them halfway, and we take our chances sometimes after we evaluate everything. Bob Loudon and the team over in Brooklyn did a fantastic job, as did the other team in the Bronx a little bit later on.
All right. Well, listen, we're just about out of time. I'm sorry. We could talk, I think, for hours about this subject, but thank you all for being here. We have Bella English of the New York Daily News and Chris Borgen of WCBS TV in New York. Chris, the veteran of these situations. Bella has just been through her first one last week. And Frank Boltz, the man who started the New York City Police Department hostage negotiating team. Our guests on Night Watch this evening, a very interesting topic. Thank you all.
Thank you.